Hello, my name is Madison Webster, and this is my project on learning disabilities. Learning disabilities. It is a term used to describe a group of neurological conditions that interfere with a person's learning. They sometimes are not obvious, and sometimes they are misinterpreted. Sorry, I accidentally hit the button. History and leaders. In 1937, Samuel Orton described a student with reading difficulties with the term stereotypia. Just so you know, I bolded all the important leaders that we are supposed to list. Samuel Orton, Anna Gillingham, Bessie Stillman, Ramonda Spalding, and Grace Verlaine said that we needed to find alternate teaching methods for those who couldn't learn to read by memorizing words. From 1940 to 1960, children with disabilities were just seen as slow learners, and if they weren't seen just as slow learners, they were labeled as retarded. In 1960, kids that aren't actually retarded were found to be labeled so. In 1963, some kids were labeled as MBD, which is mentally brain damaged. And then Samuel Kirk shortly after suggested labeling them as learning disabled. They established Association of Children with Learning Disabilities shortly after that. In the late 1960s, education responded by opening special education resource rooms. Attempts to classify learning disabilities began in the 1970s from Elna Boder, Brian Rock, and Linda Siegel. In the 1970s, the Public Law 94-142 was passed, and in 1987, 5% of school children received LD services. New technologies like MRI and PET began to develop in that time as well. In the 1980s, the Regular Education Initiative, or REI, had special and regular education join forces to tackle these problems. In 1990, Public Law 94-142 we retitled and expanded to the IDEA Public Law 101-476, and then shortly after Section 504 was created, and we'll talk about those a little bit later in this presentation. In 1983, U.S. education was considered a nation at risk because their scores were so poor, and the scores stayed poor even into the 1990s. In 2000, they created the No Child Left Behind Act to hold schools accountable. The Public Law 94-142 is that you must provide education to all handicap-free and public. Section 504 protects kids with learning disabilities from being discriminated across the board. Characteristics of learning disabilities, like there's three main ones: perceptual deficit, which is when your brain misinterprets your sensory information. They also often have problems reading, and phonemic awareness issues. Three co-occurring conditions. There's three: ADHD, CD, and TS. CD standing for conduct disorder, TS Tourette syndrome, and ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and it's basically what the name sounds like. They have problems spreading out, distractibility, they can't really focus, they sometimes have sleep disturbance, and there's many more symptoms that they show. Conduct disorder is a range of antisocial types of behavior like lack of respect or lying. It can be more extreme than that though. Tourette syndrome is a neurological disorder characterized by involuntary tics, vocalizations, and compulsions. They show tics that can be mild or severe, like eye rolling to even sexual actions. LRE, least restricted environment. LRE is when the students with disabilities receive the maximum education appropriate for their disability. The setting for LRE would be as many mainstream classes as they can with accommodations and modifications so that they are taking gen ed classes if possible. There are many programs offered like tutoring, counseling, transportation, parent advice, etc. for least restrictive environment. Now I'm going to move on to attributes screencast. Anatomy and function of the brain. The frontal lobe does the problem solving, the temporal lobe does hearing and language, the cerebellum does balance and coordination, the parietal lobe does sensory, taste, touch, pressure, and pain, and the occipital lobe does visual information. Brain injury and learning. Brain injury can affect learning and behavior. Memory can be affected, can cause learning disorders, depend on nature and extent of the brain injury. How bad it is can determine what kind of learning disorder they have or if they have one. Traumatic brain injury, TBI, can be associated with sleep problems and depression. Damage to the frontal lobe can cause problems in problem solving, which is a huge deal. Autism in the brain. Autism affects how children develop. They cannot read social clues. Their brain structure is different. For example, a large portion of is white cerebellar material and large gray cortical matter as early as age 2 in boys, which is different than the average 2-year-old boy. In adolescence, it is shown that there is less brain volume in some areas, and this plays a role in social and cognitive deficits and motor problems. ADHD in the brain. ADHD has linked to exposure to lead, so some people have developed it from that. The brain is inconsistent processing of sensory output. Control groups are different. There are no consensus of why ADHD is the way it is, but they do know that there are more excitatory chemicals in the brain when they are going through an episode. Biochemical influences on learning. Medicated students improved in accuracy and quality of work, but medication is not always correct for every student. Biochemical regulatories can be influenced by pharmaceuticals, what we eat, what we drink, also influenced by stimulants, and medicines are known to help learning, but some have very bad side effects. Research on memory. To learn, you need to attend to some stimuli, encode information about stimuli, integrate and store data in memory, and be able to retrieve the data as needed. Children with disabilities cannot always alert their stimuli. Some cannot remember all data received, and memories are stored in the hippocampus. Doing research on chemical passages can be affected by memory. Memories are controlled by chemical signs. Quiet classrooms are beneficial for students, especially with memory. Visual supports help with memory, making connections, so efficient practice, give time to show what the student knows. Don't rush them because they might have to pull it from their memory. Metacognition. Metacognition is knowledge and control individuals have over their thinking and learning. Thinking strategies best taught are at the age 7. Learning disability children have trouble transferring verbal rehearsal from activity to activity, and teaching students techniques can allow them to form insight on their own thoughts. Techniques could include note-taking, maps, graphic organizing, anything to make it easier for them. Phonological processing problems. First sign is that they are delayed speech usually. It is difficulties with the way their brain processes sounds and order of language, so that can cause a problem. Children who have trouble reading usually take a longer time to grasp concepts. They have a difficult time perceiving speech stimuli, may cause trouble in spelling. It occurs in the left temporal area of the brain and can be still taught with correct instruction. Now move on to the IEP screencast. The MBT is the multidisciplinary evaluation team. Part of the evaluation and reevaluation process is determine eligibility for special education services. So it's like they go over all the disciplinaries to see if they still qualify. And this kind of goes along with the REED, which is review existing evaluation data at the IEP. This happens every 3 years. The special education teacher orders, and it's also just to see if the student can still get services. The IEP team and who's on it, the parent, special education teacher, gen ed teacher, anyone who's directly involved in their education or life, like counselor or principal, anything like that. The initial and transition IEP. The initial IEP is the very first IEP you'll ever do for them, and the transition IEP is transitioning the student for the real world, maximizing their skills, finding them jobs, creating community connections, like just helping them try to figure out what they want to do and what they would be good at after high school. The annual review IEP is just reviewing the IEP every year, check if changes are needed, set new goals, and check on previous goals to make sure that they're being worked towards. The reevaluation IEP also happens every 3 years, make sure students still qualify, see if services are needed. A manifestation determination. If a student's behavior was because of the disability, that's a manifestation determination that the behavior manifested because of something they have wrong, and it's something they cannot control. Due process hearing provides parents with the right to dispute the school district, make sure all decisions are fair after trying ID options for dispute resolution and fair treatment for all people going through. An addendum to the IEP is something added to the addendum means something added to the end, so something added to the end of the IEP. The addendum meeting is a meeting to revise something that is already in the IEP. I kind of think of this like an amendment almost. Progress reporting their progress is what it is. Communicating with the parent, help check academic goals. Basically just make sure they're making strides towards their goals. Now for the law screencast. Laws for Learning Disabilities Timeline. In 1975, Education for All Handicapped Children was implemented. In 1990, 2000, IDEA Act was implemented. Then the Section 504 Civil Rights Act, there's no date for that one. And then the No Child Left Behind Act in 2000. Parental rights. They have the right to require confidential treatment of their children's records. Only a certain amount of people in the school can have access to them, and they can review and inspect those records, have copies of all documentation regarding their child. The intent of the law is always to have the parent involved in everything. Entrusting relationships are important with the parents and the school employees, and mainly the teachers. Comparison of the IDEA to Section 504. This is a lot of stuff, so I just posted a picture. A couple that I'll point out is IDEA is like breaks it down to with the students that fall into certain categories of mental retardation, deaf, hearing impaired, vision impaired, all that. And the Section 504 is for all school-age children qualified as handicapped, physical or mental. So that's a little bit of a difference there. Section 504 does not provide additional funds. The enforcement of the Section 504 is the U.S. Office of Civil Rights, and for IDEA, it's the U.S. Department of Education. But yeah, there's like a whole long list of a variety of differences between the two. Parents as advocates. Sometimes getting your child service can be difficult, so the best place to look usually is online because you can find information fast. And one example the book gives is www.idonline.com. And then there's seminars, books, and then you can like read on the law, and that will kind of help you as well. Students' rights. Students receive due process, and they can know their charges, understand their charges, review documents to support their charges. They need to be treated with courtesy and respect, even if something bad happened. Receive a hearing, suspended or expelled or involuntary transfer. They receive a hearing for any of those things. They are expected to have a safe learning environment and free and appropriate education, and they are expected to have accommodations for all disabilities. Teachers' rights and obligations. Teachers have the right to work in a safe environment, be treated with respect by students. They have the right to be able to teach what they want to teach, like not what they want, but what they're supposed to, but how they want, I suppose. Obligation is to notify parents before a beginning evaluation is set up an IEP. Teachers have to follow guidelines set in the IEP also, and parents have the right to access anything the teacher puts in the student's file. Behavior intervention plans. It basically is to put out the fire or stop it from happening. It's like a plan to prevent a behavior, or if it starts to occur, how to deflame it, and it sets guidelines for your student and expectations. Suspension and expulsion rates. Students need to be in school is the big thing. Students can be suspended for cumulatively 10 days a year. The behavior intervention plan is the next step, or they need to be modifying the current one, but it's not working. Teachers' efforts with students are checked. What actions were taken? Was the event bad enough for suspension, or are there alternatives? Like, was the situation handled appropriately? Is the student appropriately placed? Is a huge one as well. And is the FAPE paperwork up to date, and link between behavior and disability back to like manifestation determination?